Good morning. I'm Britt with Great North Title. Today we're going to go through some of the most commonly asked questions by realtors at the closing table or after closing. So let's see here. First off, we're going to start out with earnest money. So I think everyone online can see the screen, right? Okay, perfect. Okay. So for earnest money, one of the most commonly asked questions is, why is my check short? So if you are the listing agent, this is just a little reminder that your brokerage is holding the earnest money check. Full. Okay. So let's say for the listing agent commission, let's say your commission came in at $9,000, okay? And the earnest money, call that EM for earnest money, is $2,000 being held by your broker. So your check at the closing table will be less than $2,000. Check you'll be taking back to your brokerage will be $7,000. That will then get married with this $2,000 at your broker's office so that they can process your commission. Any questions on that at all? Talk online.
If they, well, they can put in comments or they can speak up.
Okay, let me know if there's comments. We have a lot to cover, so I'll just keep moving along. Feel free to pop a comment in there.
Can I say one thing about earnest money? Agents should always confirm that they have it. They should always confirm that they have it. You can see that because Lydia or I always put a receipt in the opportunity, and it's under earnest money receipt. Or else you can check your email if it was sent through trust funds, and you get email confirmation that the earnest money has settled. And you need to make sure that you have that before you go. You need to confirm that you have that. And title will always ask for it also. They will usually always ask for the receipt and want evidence that that trust funds has clear, or that earnest money has cleared or settled.
Let's just save headaches later.
Headaches later for everyone. Always make sure you have it.
And if you do have the buyer's side, hold it, the buyer's agent, hold it, make sure that that's well known by all parties so that we make sure that that comes out of their commission versus.
Awesome. And they also receive an earnest money, and it says right on your confirmation email which brokerage it's held at. Yep. So it says it on the receipt, because if you do have a buyer, it'll be held at the listing agent's brokerage. And we have a separate trust account that we use for all of that.
Okay. We do also hold our title. So if you ever have a situation comes about where they would just rather drop a check off at one of their offices, hold it.
Perfect.
There are some little flyers in the back if you wanted to follow along. All right. So let's see. I don't know. Move on to the next one. Alta settlement statement. So I did print up a test Alta settlement statement to run through as a buyer or a seller, just so that you know how everything is laid out. Does anybody want me to go through Alta settlement statement if you were a buyer or a seller? Or should we? Pretend they come back to it. Okay. Yep. If anyone does want me to run through it with them, I can always do it afterwards. All right. So you know what? Go back. I will bring up just one quick thing on the settlement statement here. So if you are looking for that bottom line for your client or buyer, it's a little goofy because the Alta settlement statements are designed to have everything bold except for the number that you're looking for. So due from buyer, always just look for this fine print here and then follow it over to the number here that is on the credit side that is not bold. And then same for the seller, you're going to follow that over to the debit side or the credit if they have to bring money to closing, which is hopefully not the case. But that is where you will find that. when that number is really close, sometimes we end up having buyers and cash buyers wire in the total down here because they're seeing that bold number. So just be on the lookout for that. As far as your buyer, what they can bring to closing, we will accept a wire transfer, a cashier's check, a personal check up to 1,000, and a real-time payment. If you don't know what that is, it's not super popular now, but it may be in the future. Unaccepted funds, we cannot accept transfers, cash, credit card, or money orders. So just make sure that your buyer is prepared to handle it this way. We do send out several notifications as reminders for that, as well as the lenders. Okay, so now we'll go to the next slide here. We're going to talk about assessments. So that is a big section in your purchase agreement that you kind of have to go through. So I do want to make all agents aware that you can look up assessments for most cities now online. So if you just Google the city, so City of Minnetonka assessments, you should be able to click on there and it will lead you to plugging in the property or the property ID number. And then it should let you know if there's any pending certified or levied assessments. So if you don't see it online, because not all cities are set up this way yet, you can always call the city and ask, or you can call your title. They can help you figure that out. But that's something that you really want to make sure that you have covered before you're checking all of those boxes for your buyer or your seller on that purchase agreement, just in case they've already been assessed or assessments that are about to come out. So we're going to go through the 3 different types of assessments. First off is a certified assessment. So this is an assessment that has already become levied and then has now been certified to the property taxes. So that's included in the current year taxes or going on the next year's taxes. So an example for that, any agents that work with St. Paul, there are always annual assessments, and those will get certified to the taxes every year unless the owner pays it up front. Usually it's like $100 fee for recycling and roving. Then we're moving on to pending assessment. So this is an assessment that is not levied, but it may be payable. So the city is saying, hey, you know, this assessment is coming. It depends at what point it will become due and payable. So if it is due and payable, we'll go ahead and pay that at closing. If it is not due and payable yet, we will escrow 1.5 times from whoever is responsible for it if it's the seller. If the buyer is assuming it, we can call the city and ask them if it's okay for that to not get paid, and then that can get assessed to their taxes in the future. We want to make sure that the lender is fine with that too, if the buyer does assume it. A levied assessment will be an assessment that's actually due and payable. And if not paid that year, it will get assessed to the tax. Sure. So this is a little cheat sheet just so you can kind of remind yourself as you're going through those, what each of them mean. And if there's any questions, always reach out to your title company through each specific transaction.
You should double check that even what's posted on MLS. So on MLS, they post if there's assessments, right? Don't they do that, Rachel? Like if there's an assessment pending?
They like an agent remark, they will typically like a proper agent. Like I just showed one on Friday that sidewalk, it's just a 4,400 assessment at time. It's on the buyer to pay.
It's on the buyer, and that was listed on MLS?
They like in the agent remarks. But we
So you kind of need to double check that.
In the purchase agreement, you mark like seller to cover or buyer. And so like I just had one of the mark doesn't sound that I have seller to cover, and somehow they were able to buy theirs without a $10,000 assessment. And then at time of closing, the seller had to be careful.
That I've heard that can happen. So is that something where you should always check with the city? Is there times when nobody knows, but somehow it shows up?
Yes. So there can be an assessment that now pending that the owner was just notified via mail, but if they don't live there, may not have gotten the notice.
And something could even come up from the time you sign the PA to when you close, I would imagine. So you guys always keep a close eye on that though. Yep.
Yes, yep, we do an official assessment search, but we also use that online tool. So this, yep, double check that.
I'm seeing those more and more too. Are you starting to see a lot more than I feel like in years past? Like, I feel like there's a lot more assessments out there, whether it's for like water issues, like
It could be for water, it could be for,
pipes, sewer, like with all the stuff that's going on.
Right.
Are you seeing that a lot more? Are people online? Like, I've seen so much more in agent remarks now that I think about different assessments.
And it's, something's gotta be handled with it at closing, whether it's on the buyer or seller side.
yeah, I mean, whether the buyer or seller is responsible, I would honestly, if there's like serious assessments, I would detail it, amendment that clearly states, this is what it is, this is the amount, and this is responsible. Just so there's no question later, because if there's other pieces of that assessment that come up after closing, want to have it covered in writing.
Really helpful, thank you.
Right, now we're moving on to taxes. So this is one that is a big question at the closing table for everyone, not just agents, for buyers and sellers. So understanding how the property taxes work in Minnesota will be helpful. It's, again, nothing that you have to know. Your title company handles all the prorations for you, but it's kind of good to have in your back pocket and good to understand. Okay, so in Minnesota, the current year taxes, we're just gonna go with this year, so 2024 taxes. So we pay taxes that are due in the current year. The value that they're using, that the county is using, is based on the previous year's value, but it is paid in the current year. So the way that the state of Minnesota does it is they divide the year in half. So we're gonna say first half taxes, which also means first half of the year. And then the second half taxes is also the second half of the year. So this period would be 1/1 through June 30th. Okay, then the second half of the year will be July 1st through December 31st. Okay, so now that kind of helps you understand and break down the year and how those taxes are handled. Now the due date is what throws everyone off. So this first half of the year, you do not have to pay those taxes until May 15th each year. Now the second half of the year, you do not have to pay those taxes until October 15th. So these due dates, I think, is what throws off most people. They're thinking that that is actually part of the period. It's not, it's just the due date. Did everyone already understand how property taxes work? You did? All right, I don't know if there's anything else to cover. Oh, for cash transactions, we will collect taxes if they're due within days of closing. The reason for that is because if there was a reject in those documents, and it took time to get that corrected, and then the taxes are then due and the buyer forgets taxes, we will not be able to record our document. So if you see that we're closing within 60 days of one of these due dates, we will be making sure that the taxes are paid.
So if you closed after 5/15, the sellers would have already paid the first half taxes.
Yep, and we'll verify that and prorate accordingly on the settlement. Yep. All right, we're moving right along. Okay, so next I think we have water. Yep, okay. So this is one of those questions. Why do you handle one of those silly little bills on the settlement? So like an estimated final water bill of $100. Why do we care? Well, water is the only utility bill that actually follows the property, not the person, not the individual. So like gas and electric, that will follow the individual with it. Water will stay with the property. So if your seller doesn't pay a water bill, which comes after closing, then the buyer, that will get assessed to the buyer. Buyer does not pay it, then it will eventually get assessed taxes as. So we do collect anything that's currently due for the water at closing, we just check in with the city, and then we get an estimated final as well. That will be on the high end, just until we have confirmation that the seller has paid it after closing, or we will pay a portion out of that and then refund the difference back to the seller. Any questions on water?
Seller is responsible for contacting the city to do the final reading. Like when do they usually do that reading?
So every city is a little different. So some are old school, like in St. Paul, you have to actually go down into the basement to do that reading. So if you're not gonna be at the property on the last day, I would go down and do that reading on the last day, but there, write it down. City of St. Paul requires you to call on the day of closing. They won't let you call in advance. But most of the other cities will allow you to schedule in advance, schedule it for the actual, yeah, I think most figures are on the outside where they can put it work on. All right, we'll move on to the next topic, wells. Does anyone got to do on wells?
Oh, yeah.
You did?
It was a fun one.
Yeah, and did you get it resolved?
No, I actually had to, finalize at closing because the other agent non-communicative about it. But I did have to go through the state to have it located. Yeah. Even though it was very apparent that there was a well.
Okay, so then you can attest to the fact that when you're writing up a listing agreement, and on that contract, it says, do you have a well? And they say, no, it was sealed or it was capped. That's not the correct answer. The answer is yes, I have a well, it was sealed or capped. Then after that, then you need to ask in the billing record, or we can go online and see if it's already been recorded. I did provide the link, it's on the bottom there. Just search just to see if a well has the file. But we can always, as a title company, we're always a good resource for you. Again, you don't have to remember all of this. This is what we do. But we just want you understand that you're a big piece of this application. And so we're here to help, but we want to make sure that you know to be looking out. So if there is no well on this, this is just a piece of like a warranty deed that would transfer title here. We do always have to disclose the status of the well. So the first box we would check there that there are no well. The second box would be if there is a well and the status has changed. So let's say your seller said, yes, I do have a well. We need to have it sealed because we're not using the well anymore. We have city water. So they'll get it sealed. Make sure you send those invoices to us at closing, and then send us the record. And then we will plug in all of the details to the Department of Health for this well certificate. We'll check that middle box, and then we will include well right there on the line, so that the county recorder is there. We take care of the well situation, and then Minnesota Department of Health has told us here that we've also notified both departments, and then we're totally good to go. Now, if there is a well, there's no city water, and this is going to be a well that will be used moving forward at the property, and it was already passed with the last that was reported. Then we'll just check that bottom box and say the status has not changed. It is still in use, just like it was disclosed on the previously reported. How much does it cost to record a well certificate? That is $50, and we collect that at closing. Minnesota Department of Health states that it is the buyer's responsibility, so that $50 fee goes for the buyer. If it's still in use, status hasn't changed. Question with
In neighborhoods like we use a well for sprinkling, that's considered like the last one, where it's still in use, nothing changed with it.
I guess something has been reported. So before 1990, there was no documentation of it. So anything before 1990 is not disclosed. If you do a search on the website and try to look to see if there was a well before, that won't be accurate. It'll just say what's been disclosed. So there are many wells out there that we don't know about yet or haven't been disclosed. You might have an idea that there might be one there. Now, if you are questioning, we did have a transaction recently where the seller wasn't sure if they had a well, but it looked like they might have had a well. And one seemed to be in the basement, and then there was one outside, like 20 yards away. So then they came back to us and said, hey, how do we deal with this? So then we called Minnesota Department of Health, and they said, okay, you'll just need to contact a licensed well contractor from the list here. They can't refer you to anybody, but you do want to make sure that they are a licensed Minnesota well contractor. They'll send them out, and then they will just do a search and find out the status. Well, one of these, we actually had to postpone the closing. The well had been filled with cement by a previous owner. So that seller had to pay for all the cement to be dug up and for it to be filled properly. So then $5,000 later. That's why it's important to make sure that this is taken care of before closing, because you don't want your buyer to have to deal with this down the road. It may never come up, but if they found out, that there was some type of contamination or something like that, Minnesota Department of Health would come in and it would be the buyer's responsibility. I did notice when I was doing my research though, that they have, buyer has up to 6 years to go back to the seller about a well that wasn't. So just make sure you're asking those questions and covering all those bases. And if there's ever like a question that might be a well, or inspection or whatnot, let's dig into it. We can help you, kind of guide you through that process.
And they're certified well what? Certified well contractors? And they have a approved list through Minnesota Department of Health's website?
Yeah. You can Google it too. They'll come up, I think, like, what are the most popular ones? Is it Stola or Stolka?
Yeah.
So I think that one is like the most popular one. So if ever there's like a well that hasn't been disclosed to Minnesota Department of Health but was filled, we'll call them first to see if we have old record. And then they'll go into their archives. We've gotten lucky a couple, but it's not amazing.
I had no idea.
Can't contact every well, great. Ask them.
Did you ever do this? We try, but.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not up to the contractor to notify the state of Minnesota, or it is now? No, it's up to you.
Well, they do, we have to, anytime there's a transfer of property, it has to be disclosed. So they will file a different well certificate, like their sealing record.
Well contractor. Got it.
But then an actual well disclosure certificate needs to be filed as well, anytime there's a property transfer.
Got it. Interesting.
So yes, as you come across those special situations, just reach out to Team Mel and they'll guide you through what you need to do. You got it, Mel. All right, signing authority. So anyone that attended the last training that we did, we went through all of this, but I can go through it again if we want to do a quick run through. So power of attorney. Can you use a power of attorney for a trust? No, you cannot. Can you use a power of attorney for a company? No, not. Can you use a power of attorney for an estate if somebody's passed away? No, not. So power of attorney can only be used for an individual. Okay. So let's
Still alive. Individual that's still alive.
that is alive, right? That has a heartbeat. Good
Or
point.
there.
Okay, so let's say you have a seller, and they say, okay, my mom is not doing well, so I have power of attorney for her. I'm just going to sign on her behalf. So how are you going to draft up the agreement for this person? Okay, so let's say the mother's name is Jane Doe. Okay, she is the owner of the property. She is the seller of the property. So we will state this is who your seller is. Okay, now she has a power of attorney that was filled out and completed. You're going to want a copy of that power of attorney, to prove that daughter actually has authorization to sign on behalf of Jane. So you're going to want to ask for a copy of that. And then you're going to provide that to your title company to make sure that it is reportable. So then once that's approved, then you know you have a legit power of attorney. We're good to go. They need to bring the original to closing. So if they do not have an original, we're going to have to get an original signed. So this has come up several times at pre-signs lately, where the child of the parent comes to closing and they say, oh yeah, I have the original. They bring a big folder and then they hand over all these originals. Well, they were all copies. How do we know? We do the lick and smudge test on the notary seal. So it did not smear, so it was not an original. We're up and down. Nope, this is an original. No, this is all that I have. So after we checked with the attorney, they said they don't have the original. The original was lost. So luckily in this situation, the person that gave him power of attorney lived about 20 minutes away and I had 30 minutes. So I said, we will draft up a new power of attorney right now. If he's doing well, if he's fine with standing by, we ran over there, had him sign a new power of attorney, and then came back and finished our pre-sign. So we do want to make sure that they do have an original at closing or we can't use it. The original is required by the state to record on the property. We will not accept a copy because the county recorder will not. Okay.
And is
So-
that something you guys send it? Like,
Yes, yeah,
okay.
we submit it for recording, yes.
Okay,
If we're going to. So here's the deal, in that situation, I had that seller sign the deed and the power of attorney, so we didn't actually have to record it. So the only reason we would have to record it is because of the warranty deed. So if your seller like is just in a senior living home, they can sign, we can run over there and sign them if you don't want to record the power of attorney. Because we do have to take that original. I mean, some people are really scared to give that up. You know, like really important document. If it's lost, they may not be able to take care of their other affairs.
Did they get the original back?
Yeah.
After it's recorded?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. All right, so now Jane Doe is your seller and let's say the son, or it's gonna be the daughter. So let's say Julie, the daughter, and she has power of attorney for her mom, and she's already proved that with a copy of the power of attorney, and she's confirmed that she has that original, and you've sent a copy of that to Mel and Jackie to review and make sure it's reportable. Then you are going to list your signer as Julie Doe, comma, AIF. This stands for attorney in fact. So Julie is not the power of attorney. That is the name of the document. A lot of banks will have you put POA and other people that are having you do a transaction. But as far as it goes for reporting purposes and property transfer, you're actually the attorney in fact. So that's what you want to list here. If you want to write it out, you can do that too. So you could just do Julie Doe, attorney in fact. So again, your seller is the owner who's giving the power of attorney. Your signer will be who has been appointed as the attorney in fact. All right, are we ready for the next one? Or do you have any power of attorney questions? Nope. Okay. Do we want to
Does
do
the
the
black marker work? I feel like is the light green,
So hard to
and
see the
the-
green?
is it okay?
I think it's okay.
Okay,
No one said anything.
okay.
I was gonna use the black one, but I couldn't.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. Okay, you'll be able to see this better. Okay, so next we'll do a trust. Okay, so your seller says, oh, yep, I own this in the name of my trust. Okay, great. So what document will I need to prove that who the trustee is of this trust? So we know who can sign the trust. What document will we need? Right, for the title gallery, the document that we will need will be the certificate of trust. So if that's the case, then you'll just want to ask your seller, okay, great, do you have a certificate of trust? And then they may say, oh, no, I have like a whole three-ring binder with all my trust documents. In that case, you could just ask them to open it up. Most likely there's a certificate of trust in front of it. Or they can just contact their trust attorney and they can email it right over. So once you've confirmed who has authorization to sign for this trust, your seller will be how they are listed in this trust. So for example, we'll say Jane Doe Family Trust. And most likely there's going to be a dated after that, and that will be important to include in case there's any kind of revisions. Okay, so this would be your seller then, would be the full name of the trust. So Jane Doe Family Trust dated 8/26/01. Okay, then your signer, so the way that you will plug them in to sign on the purchase agreement line would be, as long as their certificate of trust says that Jane Doe is the trustee of this, then we would list Jane Doe, comma, trustee. This is all you would need to put on that signer line, as long as you list your seller as this. Anyone had a trust purchase agreement? No,
Well, and
not yet.
just a little tidbit, just because Jane Doe's name is in the name of her trust, we cannot assume that Jane Doe can sign on behalf of her trust. We have had a transaction where it was the Jane Doe Family Trust, but Jim Doe was the authorized signer and Jane Doe had no authority to sign on behalf of the trust. So you can't assume that just because their name is referenced in their trust, that they are authorized to sign.
Can more than one person sign for Jane Doe Trust? Jane Doe
Yeah,
Family
so-
Trust? Could Jane and Jim both be able to sign?
They could, yes.
Yeah, so there could be co-trustees where they're both required to sign.
Or Jane could have passed away and they just set it up in the wife's name and it could be just the husband that has to sign or children that have to sign. So it just kind of depends, but they kept the trust.
So that certificate of trust is what you would need to determine who necessary to sign.
The state's in there.
Yeah, so when you set up a trust, your trust attorney will ask you who you'd like your successor trustee to be. So if something happens to you, property does not have to go to probate if you're in the name of the trust, and that successor then would take charge of signing on behalf of the trust. But then we would need to order a certificate of trust update from that trust attorney, so just make sure we have that contact info. Contact the trust attorney, and then they will send us a certificate of trust that states that this successor trustee now has authorization to sign on behalf of the trust. Again, you don't have to remember all this because you can rely on us to be on the process, but this is just so you have this in your back pocket. When this trust comes along, you can shoot us an email, a call, or a text, and we'll help guide you through that. All right, the other ones will be a little less complicated. Okay, so an LLC or a company, let's say you're gonna sell this for your investment seller, and they're entitled as Keller Williams LLC, okay? So this is your seller. And then as far as signing authority, if they don't have any document from the state, we can have them sign what's called a resolution that confirms that they do have authorization to sign on behalf. What you do want to do though is check and make sure that their company is active with the state of Minnesota. And how, has anyone done that yet? Has anyone had to look up a company? No, you have, Jack. You have? Yep. So you can just Google, Secretary of State Business Search. And then you can look in there, plug in the name of the company and just make sure that they are active. If they are not active, they cannot sell a property. So you'll want to tell them, go in there and reactivate it. Super easy to do.
Your name as, like, you had like a common name for your LLC, and you didn't pay your dues, and the LLC, like, say someone else now has that name, what happens then?
Have to cross that bridge. This did happen. This did happen to somebody because it was an old, okay, so when you sign up for a name with the SOS, actually do LLC or limited liability company, and two people could have the same company. So that has happened. So there is, like, for example, there's a Keller Williams LLC registered, and then there would also be a Keller Williams limited liability company. And they have two different owners because they are two different companies. So that can happen. In that case, we'll have to check with the recorder and see. So it'll depend if it's foreign or abstract. We did have, do you remember, were you involved in that one file we had to take care of? It was Lisa's file. I'll get back to you.
Curious, 'cause I know, like, I've heard of people like have lost their LLC and they like, they had a good name, but then they didn't up it, so when they went to go redo it, their name was not.
You have to, do that every 3 years? Do you remember, is it every year?
You do have to renew your license, so I can't remember the time frame of it.
I do it for this office.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you get a little reminder in your email. So if you do have a company, that's a good reminder. Make sure that your contact info is correct, state of Minnesota, because if you have an old email address or like an old company email address, you won't get those reminders. So if you do have a company, just make sure that you have the correct contact info so that you are reminded so you don't lose it. But yes, if you do lose it, we'll have to check it. You probably have to do check by situation like that. Okay, so once you have confirmed then that your seller is active with the state of Minnesota and you receive some type of signing authority or they're gonna sign a resolution, then we can determine who our signer is. So your signer will be Jane Doe. And then however they're listed on their paperwork, it's usually going to be a managing member. And that's all they have to do for their sign. Some people prefer to do president, do that. You can choose really whatever needs.
Executive officer.
What?
Executive officer.
Or executive office.
Some of the names that titles that people will come up with.
All right, so LLC, the last one is, okay, so for an estate. Okay, so let's say you have a seller and they say, all right, I'm gonna sell my mom's property. She passed away. What is the first question you're gonna ask? Did you go through probate?
Right?
So you have to go, if there's a sole member that owns it, so let's say the dad previously passed away, there's just only the mom in title now. If she has passed away, she was the only owner on the property here, the property does have to go through probate court, even if she has a will. The will makes it easier for probate court to determine who should be appointed and how the proceeds should be handled. But once you've confirmed then that it's gone through probate, then you'll ask them for the order. And this is what will confirm who was appointed to be the personal representative of the estate. All right, so Jane Doe is the mother. Alright, so here's the seller. Jane Doe is your seller. She's since passed away, so the personal representative was appointed through probate court, and now has authorization to sell this property. So if Jane Doe is entitled, this property now becomes, after probate's complete, this becomes the estate of Jane Doe. All right, now your signer will be John Doe. And here you could do PR, or you can write out personal rep or personal representative. Any questions on an estate probate? Okay, if you ever come across a seller that has passed and you're not sure, maybe there was a transfer on death deed recorded or something like that, just check in with Team Mel, do a quick search and see if a transfer and death deed was recorded, or maybe they were entitled as a trust and the survivor didn't know that. We could just do a quick double check before you say, oh, you have to go through probate, because that could be time consuming and costly. You don't want to put them through something that they don't have to do. So if there are questions, just reach out to us. We'll guide you in the right direction.
Do you ever have it where multiple like siblings are listed as a signer, or is it always?
No, there has been, yeah. I've seen 2 and sometimes 3 of them, and they all have to act together. And so you have to orchestrate the multiple siblings because they are representatives together.
So in that case, you have 3 signers, all named comma PR.
Correct, yes.
That is rare, though. They usually typically only appoint one, even if there's multiple children, and then those proceeds are payable to the estate, and then usually the estate attorney will help process all of those funds, all the heirs get their equal shares. All right, now we get to move on to our next fun topic. All right, here we get to deal with PERTA. All right, so we all know there is that question about whether your seller is US citizen or not. Okay. Now, when we meet with them at the closing table, we will typically have them fill out this form on the left here if they're a US citizen, just confirming that they are a US citizen. Now, if they are a resident alien, we would have them fill out this other form here, and then they would have to check then which one made them a valid resident alien. So do they have a green card because they passed the green card test, or did they pass the IRS substantial presence test? So we'll have them check which box. Now, if this is the case where they have a social, have a green card, they're just here for however many years, and they have a social security number assigned to them, just make sure you do get a copy of their green card, and you can just send that to us. If you don't have it ahead of time, we'll ask for it at closing too. But we try to get ahead of this so that we don't have surprises when we come to the pre-sign table. Now, if they are a foreign person, they do not have a social security number, they are not paying taxes in the state or in the US, then we will have to have them sign the documents certifying that they are a foreign person. This form that we'll have them fill out is an 8288 form. And then we will have to hold back 15% of their sales price and send that into the IRS to escrow until they file capital gain or file taxes and pay capital gains on that property. And then they get to deal with the IRS on getting any kind of refund that they are due from that. So if you do have a foreign person, just give us a heads up on that so that we can start working on all the details for that. Now just remember that none of us are tax professionals or real estate attorneys, so we cannot offer any kind of tax or legal advice. So if they have further questions about this, they do need to contact their CPA or a certified tax professional that deals with PERTA. You know what?
A foreign person? You don't see a foreign person very often.
Every once in a while. We had a few in the past.
And a foreign person is a person without a green card or a social security number. And does every person that have a green card have a social security number?
They should be assigned a tax ID number or a social security number.
And it's 15% off the top, not proceeds, not after the mortgage, not after, or not after cash. It's flat off the top, they take that by. Yeah. That's why it can be so shocking for them if they aren't aware of it when they are initially presented with an offer, so.
That's in the PA if the buyer's a US citizen?
Yeah.
Seller.
Or the seller?
Yeah.
It's alternative disclosure. That's, I think, like, all they have to mark if they are, citizen or if they know that. Those are like the two things you get.
There's nowhere on the PA if the buyer is a US.
And we're not, and
Buyer
they're not
doesn't matter.
super concerned about that
Oh.
because you only get capital gains tax on
Oh.
the sale.
Makes sense. Yep. Hello. See, if I was an agent, that would just automatically happen.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
All right, so again, if you have questions, you know, as those come up, just reach out.
Oh, I would imagine not.
Really just depends, right? You gotta figure out what's best for you.
Okay, so I think this is the last thing actually that we're going to discuss today. 1099 reportings for capital gains. So, I think a lot of sellers probably ask you as an agent, okay, well, what am I gonna be responsible for capital gains? You know, will I owe anything to the IRS? Bill? Again, cannot offer any tax or legal advice, so you can't truly answer that question. But what you can say is, these are the questions that you will be asked by the title company. And if false, if you answer false to any one of these questions here, then the title company will report the property to the IRS, which is required by law. So I will go through each of these questions and kind of simplify it. The way that you ask these questions is kind of weird for a true and false answer. So I have owned this as my primary residence for at least 2 of the last 5 years. True. I have not sold or exchanged any other principal residence during that 2-year period. So we're gonna go for all truths here. And then if you used any of a portion of the residence for business or rental. So if you claimed any part of the property for business purposes, or if you rented out a part of the property that you know was filed with taxes and whatnot, then you want to make sure that you do check false because the IRS will come back later. So make sure you're honest up front.
That's if one of our agents have an office in their house that they deduct from their taxes. If they would have to answer that false. Any business person who works from home.
Yep. Yeah.
They put it on their check.
If they put on their tax
If
and
they-
claim and file deductions.
And that would be a good thing to ask your tax professional. Is it worthwhile to do that? You know, depending on how long do you plan on being in your home? Does it make more sense to add that as a deduction for your square footage every year? Or would it be better to just not do that at all and then be able to answer true when you go to sell the property?
Interesting.
And then the next question would be, this applies for $250,000 for the sales price, not what they're walking away with. Okay, this is not net, this is gross. So if the sales price is over $250,000 for a single person, then you are going to have to check false here. If it is a married couple selling the property and the sales price is over $500,000, then we would also have to check false here. So if you're married and you're selling it for $450,000, no capital gains or check true.
If you're 2 single people and it's under 500, it still is over 250
For each single.
Yeah, you have to check that.
And then the false, the only thing you're doing is you're personally reporting it, or Great North is reporting it to
Yep.
the IRS.
Yes. So we have to report the sale to the IRS, which then will trigger them to make sure that you are also claiming that as seller when you file your taxes, that you have address all of these, there may be ways around any kind of tax implications. That's why you check in. And then the last one here is just if you were involved in 31 exchange. So typically that is rare, right? That's just used for investors that are wanting to postpone paying capital gains until a later transaction. So they could roll these proceeds into a 1031 exchange and then use those to purchase their property. If anyone is interested in a 1031 exchange or you have clients that are interested in that, let us know because we do have a great local 1031 exchange that we work with. We don't receive any kind of kickback for it, but just because they're so great to work with all around, we have a great recommendation for you guys.
What happens if you say, yes, I wrote off my house for you, being a 1030, but like, you get taxes because you're not supposed to pay tax, but if you say yes, you might get tax.
So we're just going to ask, let's say you're the seller, we're gonna ask all of these questions. If any of these were false, then that just triggers us to just notify the IRS that this property needs to be mentioned in your taxes when you're filing it. If you have square footage that you claimed, that's when you want to check with your CPA and say, okay, did I actually claim the square footage on my taxes? So should I say false here? We have had people call their CPA after closing people because it's like, I'm not sure if I did it or I didn't. And then they usually get a response right away. But
Then you are taxed on, like, it's kind of like, well,
I don't know if it will affect you tax wise, but you have to mention it.
The majority of people are gonna have false anyway because it's over 250 or 500 as a married couple. I would think a lot of people fall in the category of
Correct.
over that. So it looks like the majority of the time, one of these answers is going to be false. Got it. And then if you take your proceeds from your home and put it towards your next home, you still don't pay capital gain tax.
All very dependent, because taxes are so unique.
Got it.
Okay.
Every situation.
Got it.
Just this form is just basically saying, like, when you then file your taxes for that year, you better mention the fact that you sold this house.
Because we're going to,
Because these forms need to match.
Yeah.
That's all
So
that
you
is.
will receive a 1099-S. And so you want to use that form when you file your tax, whether it affects you or not, it just totally depends on your
it's
situation.
probably not going to. That's all I probably would be my packet. I don't know, not tax. But I'm just saying, like, if it's one of those, like, oh. Everyone always says, like, stay everywhere for 2 years.
Yes.
Like the amount of people that maybe work from home or things like that.
And
Are they
amount of-
penalized because of that?
there's not too many houses under 250. So I would think the majority.
They have not adjusted those numbers in a
Yeah.
very long time.
Really.
And a lot of
Have to.
people who work from home don't, you know, their office because it's also a guest room or like there's such strict guidelines for claiming that as an office actually that I've heard. Not a tax expert either, but.
And CPAs will tell you, based on your situation, does it work well? Does it? Cool. Yes. All right. So I think we're done with all of our slides here. The other flyer that I had there for you guys is probably something that you might be aware of already, but we have a new seller net sheet tool. I can also use to our buyer folks. If you haven't received the invite yet, just let Mel or Jackie know and they can plug you in. Or you can scan this QR code also on our website. Go on the bottom right hand corner at greathomethings.com. It'll be on the bottom right hand corner with like a little circle calculator on there. You'll be able to do all kinds of cool things, including seller net sheets. You can also compare offers side by side. Let's say you get 3 offers in and you want to show your seller what is each one going to look like and what will that bottom line look like. You can show those side by side. Now, just a reminder that you do want to set up a login for it if you want to do the net sheet, because you can do a quick quote without logging in. But in order to get all of the other tools, you have to log in, and then it will save all of your info too from previous transactions. On the backside, it will show all of the other cool things that you're able to do with this tool. But we're hoping that this adds value to the way that you do business, and then just makes it a little bit more professional and accurate. When you plug in the figures for the seller net sheet, it will automatically pull our title fees for you, and it will automatically pull the government reporting fees. If you know what the property taxes are, you can plug that in a different section, and it will prorate it for you based on when the closing date is, so you don't have to try to figure out that piece. And then in the commission section, you could plug in whatever the percentage will be for both agencies. And then below, doesn't say broker admin, but there is a spot right below that you can plug in the broker admin fee for. Remember what term they use, but there's a spot for all of that.
Well, thank you so much.
That was really helpful.
Thanks for coming today. If there are any other topics that you want to learn about, just let us know and we'll put something together for you.
Thank you.